So now we're going to move into a different kind of Kyrie, and this is a different setting with a different set of folk characters. These are real characters. I made up everything in The Girls on the Roof, but this is from The Desert Pilgrim, and it's a true story, and it's set in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I stand near the back of the nave of Father Sergei's church, my eyes fixed on the two nuns bowing and chanting at a lectern near the wall, their black veils drawn down to their eyebrows, the room dark and hazy from the incense rising up in the air. Kyrie eleison, the three Russian Orthodox monks in the next room sing. Kyrie eleison, the tiny congregation of about a dozen parishioners answers. In unison, they bow and cross themselves according to the Eastern Rite, from right shoulder to left. I follow suit, standing there barefoot, our shoes all piled in a clump near the door of this converted garage in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Christe eleison, the monks chant. Father Sergei, or Papa as he is called by his followers, passes by the sanctuary door, his bright gold and white vestments rustling and glittering, the flames from the candelabra stationed near the altar flickering in the dimness. A large votive candle encased in red glass hangs down from the ceiling in our room, casting eerie shadows on the wall, each square inch filled with brightly painted icons, statues of saints, skulls of animals, photographs of dead monks in their caskets. Even the ceiling is covered with icons, long-haired men staring down at me with slightly crazed-looking eyes. My feet dig into the old oriental carpet, its threads worn and dusty. I am a white, middle-aged, middle-class university professor from Iowa. What am I doing here? I ask myself. Well, what I was doing there was I had come to the University of New Mexico to teach, but I'd also been in a bad car accident right before that. And basically the medical model had given up on me, and I had been paralyzed in a wheelchair, in a walker, and at this point I was on a cane. And I decided, what did I have to lose? I would see if I could connect with some traditional Hispanic healers. And of course I didn't have any idea how I was going to do that. And I had a student who was from one of the oldest Hispanic families in New Mexico. They'd been there for 500 years. And he came in my office one day, so I asked him, where should I go? And he worked for the Albuquerque Journal, so he knew everybody, and plus he'd lived there all his life. So he took out his little notebook and he wrote down this intersection of two streets. And he said, he passed this little piece of paper across my desk, and he said, "There, you go there, but don't go alone and don't go at night." And he said, "You'll find your healers there." And I was like, okay, gracias. I put it in my desk, and it didn't do anything about it for several weeks. And then I went down to the intersection of these two streets, and I thought, no, what am I doing here? I'm just standing here on this corner, and I'm supposed to find healers. What is this about? And when all of a sudden a monk literally jumped out of the bushes, 6'3" tall Russian Orthodox monk, jumped out of the bushes, and he was in front of a beautiful adobe wall with life-size icons painted on them. And he said, "I bet you're wondering who painted those icons, aren't you?" And I said, "Well, I am wondering that." And he said, "Well, that would be me." And he turned out, the first thing actually that attracted me to him, he's, in New Mexico you can't grow anything there. I mean, it's like, sand and no water. And in the back of this little bungalow, which he had converted into a monastery, was literally the Garden of Eden, and he had fruit trees and vegetable gardens and a million little Chihuahua dogs and roses growing up, and then he had those little white crosses that people put in the ditches when somebody's had a car accident or something. Mm-hmm. He had those plopped down in his vegetables, and he had like the 7 deadly sins. Well, the equivalent of that in Russian Orthodoxy, written on the crosses. And so, like right in the middle of the zucchini, which was really abundant, he had lust. I was like, I think I like this guy. Anyway, he turned out to be a brilliant man, and he was indeed a healer, and he spoke 14 languages, and he was one of the hidden Jews of New Mexico. He'd grown up in this mountain village, and in 1492 was a significant year. Not only did Christopher Columbus sail the ocean blue, but the Jews were expelled from Spain, and his family was part of that. And so basically they were conquistadors, and they left, came to Mexico, and then up into what is now our New Mexico. And they were totally underground, because if anybody knew about their Jewishness, of course, in Spain, they'd be put to death, and they had that same fear in Mexico. So it wasn't until it was about 1976 they kind of came to, and this Father Sergei woke up and he said, I think we're Jewish. And everybody was like, no, come on, dude, come on. And finally they acknowledged that. And so he grew up Catholic, but he was really Jewish, and then he decided he wanted to be something, a shaman or something, a priest, something. He was really confused. And so, as all confused people do, he went to Berkeley, California, and got his PhD in comparative religions and became a Russian Orthodox monk. So there you go. So he was a fascinating guy, and he became my spiritual director for that time. And then across the street was a woman named Lou, that I call Lou in the book, and she was a herbalist, and Father Sergei was growing herbs in his garden for her to sell across the street. And so he told me, you really should go over there and see her too. And I was so skeptical about this whole setup. So I finally one day I went across. And the drugstore just looked like an old Walgreens kind of thing on the outside. Well, here's what it looked like in the inside. The walls were lined with pictures of the saints, their robes sweeping their feet, their halos circling their heads painted with bold yellow strokes. St. Michael and Gabriel, St. Joseph and Our Lady of Guadalupe, the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and St. Christopher. Each saint carried a name tag in both English and Spanish, as did the plastic boxes of herbs and mason jars filled with twigs, flowers, and leaves that lined the shelves. Diente de leon, dandelion, hinojo, fennel, muscada, nutmeg, and cola de caballo, horsetail. On the top shelves were still more religious, primitive wood carvings. St. Francis in his sandals, a bird perched on his shoulder, St. Teresa of Avila in her ecstasy, Christ nailed to the cross. A woman with short graying hair, who appeared to be in her early 60s, stood behind the counter. Her frame was solid, her back straight, her head and arms moving in steady, self-assured motions. She was dressed in a white button-down Western shirt and jeans, and on her left wrist she wore a silver bracelet with a large turquoise stone in the center. She did not appear magical or mystical. Rather, she seemed like someone who might be clerking in an old-fashioned department store, a 20-year veteran who knew where every item was located in each aisle. She peered up at me from behind her glasses with her large, round, brown eyes and introduced herself as Louisa, or Lou. "Oh, you're from Iowa," she said. "I have another friend from Iowa. She's a social worker." "How did you know I was from Iowa?" I asked. I hadn't given her any information, not even my name. I recognized you right away because you wear a little hat. My friend wore a little hat too, from Iowa. I met my friend when she had just arrived here. She needed a toothbrush and was walking down the street and saw the sign, so she stopped in. Well, I decided to let Lou do her magic, work her magic on me, and she made this concoction right there and then in a little water bottle and stirred up these herbs and told me to drink them. So I'm still a little skeptical of this. So I say, and you've had good success with these herbs? See, of course everyone's different. I don't give the same thing to todo el mundo. Look, people come in here sick with everything from dry mouth to hemorrhaging, and I recommend a potion, and a few days later they call and say, hey, I feel better. Lou's whole face lifted in delight, her high rounded cheekbones pressing against her oval glasses. She twirled around on her stool, her quick movements quick and spirited, her hands pressing and straightening the cloth that covered her card table. I tried to pay Lou for the consultation, but she insisted it was free. No, I don't charge, she said. My talent as an herbalist is a gift from God. And when you have a gift, you have to give something back. The telephone rang, and Lou leaped up to run behind the counter. See, that's right, she said. I told you to take Immortal. Same thing. See, Immortal, everlasting, everlasting Immortal. Bueno. Lou hung up and returned to her desk. You see, I have people call from all over the United States. She spun around on her stool and directed her attention back to me, as if I were the only person in her life at the moment. She looked at me and smiled, her whole face consumed with hope, as if to say, this will work. Don't worry. I'm good at what I do, and these herbs are potent healing agents. You must place your faith in their power. You take these herbs and come and see me in a week, Lou said at last. We'll get along. You're from Iowa. You'll be fine, as long as you don't need a toothbrush.